Discovering the notion of perhapsing was one of the most important moments in my writing career. It provides a freedom and a way of unlocking thoughts and motivations in others and in your own deep past. But what is perhapsing? Well, it's a term that was coined by the American writer and teacher Lisa Knopp, and it addresses the issue of what happens when you are writing non-fiction and you don't have access to all the facts that you need to sustain your reflection with depth and fullness. You can't make things up. This is not fiction, but you can do some perhapsing. In short, perhapsing involves making assumptions based on the available evidence, but signalling these assumptions. In her piece titled Perhapsing, published in Now Write Non-Fiction, Lisa Knopp used an example from the writer Maxine Hong Kingston to show how it works. When she was a girl, Kingston was told a story by her mother about her father's sister in China who became pregnant even though her husband had been away for years. On the night the baby is born, villagers raid the family's house and farm. The aunt gives birth in a pigsty and then kills herself and her baby by jumping into the well from which the family drank. Kingston's father was so shamed by his sister's behaviour that Kingston was forbidden to ever mention her in his presence. In order to write about this in an essay, Kingston needed a deeper understanding of her aunt's life and a clearer picture of what happened the night she drowned. But Kingston knew nothing except for what she had been told. And there was no way to find out. So she chose to speculate an interior life for her aunt. Now, I quote from Kingston. Perhaps she had encountered him in the fields or on the mountain where the daughters-in-law collected fuel. Or perhaps he first noticed her in the marketplace. He was not a stranger because the village housed no strangers. She had to have dealings with him other than sex. Perhaps he worked in an adjoining field, or he sold her the cloth for the dress she sewed and wore. His demand must have surprised and terrified her. She obeyed him. She always did as she was told. The word perhaps cues the reader that the information is speculative. And by perhapsing, Kingston offers motives, actions, justifications that add greatly to the story, but which do not cross the line into fiction. Kingston doesn't have to use perhapsing all the time, as we get the gist of what's going on. Elsewhere in the essay, Kingston uses other words and phrases that serve the same purpose, such as, it could very well have been, and she may have been. You can use words like maybe, or as I have done, turn an assumption into a question, such as, could she have been thinking such and such? In my family, there's a news article dating back to 1938, which chronicles the story of my grandfather escaping from the Nazis in Austria. He related it to the journalist in matter-of-fact terms, or it was at least reported in that way. If I was writing a family memoir, when I got to this point in my family's history, I would use the information from the article and then try to imagine what was going on in my grandfather's head as he raced to the border with his wife and young child, my mother. Now, I don't know for sure, but perhaps it enables me to go down this path and thereby create a story with power and emotion that without this technique I may not have been able to do. Perhapsing can also apply to your own stories. Maybe you're recalling something that happened to you when you were very young, but cannot recall how you felt. Perhapsing allows you to suppose it. It also allows you to explore the motivations of others involved in events with you. Perhaps they were thinking this. Maybe they were thinking this. It's liberating. Just make sure that when you do use the perhapsing technique, that you do so with respect and with reasonable assumptions. This is an exercise in two parts. First, select an event from history for which you have some knowledge and facts, but which also opens itself to conjecture. Write a couple of paragraphs using the perhapsing technique. For example, what was Joan of Arc thinking on the stake? Or what was going through the mind of that man who stood before the tank in Tiananmen Square? Once you've done that, Extend the exercise to your own experience or that of a family member. Maybe you had a relative who fought at war but is no longer alive. With perhapsing, you can get inside their head. I hope you now have a better understanding of what lies ahead for anyone writing a memoir. You've taken in a lot, so I thought I'd give you the top 10 things to remember as a bit of a shortcut to revision. 1. Writing a memoir involves revealing a great deal of yourself. It can be an emotional roller coaster. You need to be prepared for this. If you're not ready for this, wait until you are. 2. Try and sum up the theme of your memoir in one word, then keep that word front of mind while you're writing. 3. Consider how your memoir will affect other people. How much are you willing to risk relationships or breach privacy? There are no rules or lines here. It's up to you, but consider how far you are willing to go before you start writing. 4. There is a difference between truth and fact. A memoir is a combination of both of these. Don't worry if some of your truths are different to the recollection of others. You own your truths. 5. When relating events, try to recall as many sense experiences as possible. It's not just about what you saw. It's also about what you heard, smelt, touched, and tasted. It will make your writing far more evocative. 6. Go into the research stage with an open mind and a degree of flexibility. You never know what you're going to find. 7. When you're researching, don't just go for the most important information. Pay as much regard to information and anecdotes that make you go, wow. 8. Just because something happened does not make it interesting. Conflict drives stories. If you're writing about an event and there's no conflict, either find or recall the conflict or consider leaving it out. 9. You always need to determine the motivations for people's actions. Constantly ask yourself the question, why? 10. Perhapsing provides a freedom and a way of unlocking thoughts and motivations in others and in your own deep past. No doubt it's all a bit overwhelming right now. I understand that. But look, just don't be in a rush. Think about everything I've told you. Give it time to process and just put it in practice step by step. And please let me know how you go. Thank you.